So here's the deal. It's been a year since my top 10 manga video and I've pretty much read double the amount of stuff I had back then, so here's 20 manga recommendations in the form of my personal top 20 list. Keep in mind that I don't actively keep track of what I prefer over what, but for the sake of this video I tried my best. Hopefully you find something new to read, as I've tried my best to indulge in some lesser known series over this year, or maybe you'll get a reminder to read something you were supposed to a long time ago. Also, do consider subscribing if you enjoy my videos. It really helps out a ton. 20. Mu. By the author of Astro Boy, M.W. pronounced Mu is regarded to be Osamu Tezuka's darkest work. The main antagonist of this story is essentially a sociopath embodying pure evil, facing off against a priest struggling with serious inner demons. Sound kinda familiar? If you're into dark crime dramas like the works of Naoki Urasawa, this one should be right up your alley, as it does seem pretty likely that Urasawa's monster was somewhat inspired by Mu. To top it off, it's actually a surprisingly progressive LGBT story from the 1970s, which you don't see all that often. 19. Hunter x Hunter. This ought to raise some eyebrows. Hear me out first. The reason Hunter x Hunter is so low right now is because I very recently picked it up, and I did consider not putting it on this list at all, but I really just haven't had this much fun reading something in the longest time. I'm currently around chapter 50, and this manga has a sort of charm I haven't experienced since Dragon Ball, and I believe that earns it at least a spot on this list, although I have no doubt it'll keep climbing the ranks as I get more and more into it. 18. Soloist in a Cage. Soloist in a Cage is an emotional journey about a girl looking for her long-lost brother in Prison City, a place where criminals of this universe are sent to essentially either rot or practice crime with little to no restrictions. This setting leads to our protagonist Chloe bumping into a variety of characters and situations that lead to awesome moments from emotional to hype as fuck. Chloe quickly became one of my favorite female protagonists, and I especially recommend this one if you're searching for something to complete in a fairly short time frame, as it is only around 20 chapters long. 17. Goodbye Eri. People hold this one to a very high standard, and so do I. I might come to regret placing it so low, but I also want to avoid having the entire latter part of this video be nothing but Fujimoto works, so I've kinda spaced them out. Goodbye Eri is one hell of a mindfuck. Half of the manga is essentially a short film that's kind of a documentary, but with a spice of fiction, and the paneling deliberately makes the reader confused about what's real and what's part of the film. When it comes to manga one-shots, this is one for the history books. Fujimoto really has a knack for him, and for me, this is his second best one, so even though it's at number 17, by no stretch of the imagination is it bad. None of the manga here are. 16. Blood on the Tracks. This one has dropped down quite a few spots in the last year, and it's less due to the story going to shit or something like that, and more so due to me discovering stuff I just enjoy more. This gut-wrenching psychological horror story about a shy boy getting mentally tormented by his mother on a regular occasion will be one of the manga I'll unfortunately remember on my deathbed, no matter how Shuzo Oshimi decides to end it. And if you like to not enjoy reading something, here you go I guess. 15. Not Simple. Another one for people who just love to sit down for a day and read something soul-crushing. Not Simple is the story of Ian, a regular guy who quite literally has the worst family imaginable and just an all-out tragic life. I especially recommend this one to fans of Oyasumi Punpun by Inoue Asano, as it does share a similar vibe. I made a video about this one a while back where I urged people to read the prologue of Not Simple last, as it is chronologically the last chapter, and if you start off with it, you'll know the ending to the story before you even really get into the story. This advice got mainly positive feedback from people who followed it, albeit a few people did disagree with me. Understandably so, since prologue first is the intended way to read it. So ultimately, I'm not your fucking dad, you decide how you want to read it. Bottom line, I really hope you do, because it's a really good story. 14. Pluto. Naoki Urasawa's Pluto is a manga I would consider near flawless. Short and easily consumable in comparison to his larger works, Pluto checks every box a thrilling mystery manga should, from engaging characters, to plot twists, to a mysterious antagonist and a compelling universe. Being a sort of interpretation, or I guess weird adaptation even, of Osamu Tezuka's Astro Boy with a dark twist, this one ought to please those who appreciate classic classics and simply impeccable writing. When I initially read through this, I listened to Nujabes the entire way through, and I recommend you try it out. There's something really dope about listening to music that's essentially sample after sample while reading something that could also be seen as utilizing sampling in a way, only in a different medium. 13. Vagabond. Considered one of the greatest manga of all time, Vagabond holds a special place in my heart despite its relatively low spot on this list. The thing is, I kinda just stopped reading it, and now I'm at the point where I honestly just need to buy the physical copies and start from the beginning again. But when I did read it, I was immersed beyond comprehension. I couldn't stop thinking about it, and having a background in martial arts myself made Vagabond all the more compelling. It's the fucking best martial arts story there is. Like, I literally picked up karate again thanks to this one, although unfortunately my crippled knee couldn't handle it for too long, but that's besides the point. I believe Vagabond has this effect where whatever it is you want to achieve or get done in your life currently, it will help you get off your ass or even try something completely new with your life. It's such a motivational story, and I believe it has the potential to change how someone approaches obstacles and bettering yourself. And to top it off, it's just a really compelling story, even excluding all the philosophical and motivational aspects. 12. Chainsaw Man. Who doesn't fuck with Chainsaw Man, right? An emotional slice of life human drama disguised as an absolutely insane parody of the superhero genre. The anime has actually enhanced my experience with this one, as the slower nature of it has made me realize some of the deeper nuance the series holds. So whether you want to read it or watch it, I think isn't really that important. Both versions are incredible in my book. Just get to it already. 11. A Journal of My Father. This manga spawned one of the most notorious and hilarious comments on the history of my channel, and I recognize A Journal of My Father is not for everyone. Yoichi, the protagonist of this story, has distanced himself from his family for over 10 years, only returning to his hometown to attend his father's funeral, who he had considered pretty much a bad parent for many years. The story goes through a collection of Yoichi's childhood memories containing his father, partially narrated by his relatives and partially reminisced by himself. And it's one of the most intimate stories I've ever read. It's hard to recommend this manga to people when someone's personal life really dictates how they perceive and experience it, but now you at least know of its existence. Going into the top 10, the obscurity level of the upcoming series is going to go down a bit, so here's a few manga that didn't make the list, but I suggest you check out anyway, and that you might not have heard of. Bibliomania, a psychological horror-esque short manga that I would describe as Alice in Wonderland meets Homunculus. If you don't know what Homunculus is, we'll get to that. Mujirushi, a fun and charming Naoki Urasawa work requested by the Louvre Art Museum that also utilizes this concept of sampling I brought up with Pluto. Our Happy Time. Based on a Korean novel by the same name, Our Happy Time is a beautiful story about a suicidal musician gradually falling in love with an inmate on death row. Yeah, it's a real fucking cryfest. To Strip the Flesh, a collection of short stories by Tatsuki Fujimoto's assistant Toda containing emotional one shot after another tackling some really important societal themes. Just listen to the song. Tatsuki Fujimoto's latest one shot. Yeah, for some reason this one flew over a lot of people's radars, so there you go. Now on to the top 10. 10. Tokyo Ghoul. This one feels so personal, I find it difficult to put my thoughts to words. The anime alone was one of, if not the most important piece of fiction to me in my depressed teen years, and finally getting to read the manga in my 20s was an experience like no other. This is the only manga in years I've read in my native language too, and I was pleasantly surprised that the Finnish translation fucking slaps. Although none of you give a shit about that. Yeah, it's Tokyo Ghoul, what do you expect me to say? If you loved the anime and still haven't read it, read it, and if you hated the anime, read it. 9. Look Back. The only one shot in my top 10 and the most touching Tatsuki Fujimoto story in my opinion. Look Back is a masterpiece about the struggles that come with creative passion, as well as a beautiful, albeit soul-crushing story about friendship. I literally read this in physical form today and it never fails to make me cry. I recommend Look Back to each and every manga fan, period. 8. Berserk. The quintessential seinen manga that needs no introduction. While not my favorite due to my squeamish nature, Berserk still lives absolutely rent-free in my wussy head. If we're talking immersion, Berserk is king. I'm not into medieval shit, but the summer I read Berserk, my girlfriend suggested we go to a medieval festival, and I was literally there before she finished her fucking sentence. It's the highest rated manga of all time for a reason, and you don't need me to sell it to you when there's a million videos giving it the love it deserves on this very site. Read it already if you haven't for some fucked reason. 7. Homunculus. Some of you may already be tired of me gassing Homunculus. Well, too bad, because it's the manga that essentially reignited my passion for the medium. A psychological horror story that takes a dive into some of the deepest and darkest layers of the human psyche in some of the most creative ways. It's a must-read for any seinen fan and fan of dark entertainment in general. Be wary that it does have some questionable scenes that even the most hardcore fans don't really approve of, but the majority of it is so good we kinda let it slide, I guess. Previously being only available in English as a fan translation, 7 Seas recently claimed a license to finally print official English releases of this incredible series, and I cannot wait. Cop yourself a copy in June 2023. Not sponsored, I wish though. 6. The Horizon. A story about 2 children trying their best to get by in a world completely destroyed by war. Not a single work has made me cry the way this manhwa did. And yeah, it's a manhwa, not a manga. I truly hope no one cares about something as trivial as that. I recommend dedicating an entire day to this one and making sure you have no important errands to run afterwards, because it may fuck you up for a while, but it'll be one of the best things you've ever read. 5. Dragon Ball. Yeah, on a lighter note, Dragon Ball, my childhood. This is one of the main reasons I included those extra stories before the top 10, cause how the fuck am I supposed to try and pass this as a recommendation video and have Dragon Ball on it? Yikes. But if you haven't for some reason read it, it's one to consider. Nostalgia aside, it's a thoroughly captivating and enjoyable journey that even holds up to today's standards. The humor is fucking timeless, and I imagine there's a novelty to finally indulging in the manga that inspired practically every single huge shonen story in the past 20 years. A year ago, this was in the number 1 spot, and while it still is in my heart and will forever be, I wanted to take a different approach to this list, just to clarify to any who might be confused. 4. Our Dreams at Dusk. This manga is the definition of comfort to me. I'm sure there's major recency bias here, and some of my old favorites may very well turn out to be more meaningful to me in the future, but this is where it stands now. Our Dreams at Dusk is an intimate story about coming to terms with one's own identity and respecting the identities of others, covering a multitude of LGBTQ+ topics and themes, miraculously representing many different minorities in a short time frame without feeling like it's forcefully trying to cater to as many people as possible. I think everyone has something to gain from this story. 3. Fire Punch. Fire Punch thoroughly surprised me, and while it's not as polished as some of Fujimoto's newer works, it really hit me in the gut in more ways than one. It manages to be incredibly existential and deep while containing the usual fucked up Fujimoto comedy, or to some not so much comedy elements. Again, recency bias potentially, but I would go as far as to say it has my favorite ending in all of manga. Man, I wish I could talk about it, but no spoilers. It's been months and I still haven't gotten it out of my head. I'm fucked up, dude. 2. Monster. Naoki Urasawa's Monster, the best manga I've ever read. It's a masterpiece crime mystery, and the dynamic between Dr. Tenma trying to catch the twisted Johann Lieber lurking in the shadows pulling the strings is really something to behold. Also, being from Europe myself, it's awesome to read a manga that not only feels so real and believable, but is also happening so relatively close if it were real. I think that might be monkey brain moment, whatever. It feels close to home, and it's right up your alley if a cat and mouse chase is what you crave. The anime is also just as good, although you can get through the manga much quicker. Number 1, I have to do it. There's no way around it. There's too much fucking history. It's Oyasumi Punpun. If you've somehow managed to avoid hearing about it, basically...
So this chicken called Pum Pum falls in love with the new girl in class called Aiko. Aiko's kind of a psycho and doesn't have the best family life, so she demands Pum Pum...